washer.
Welcome to another episode. Now, I've done my best to avoid an episode like this, but unfortunately when it comes to project cars and engine conversions, there's inevitably all those little jobs that have to be done. These have to be done to make your car either A, road legal, B, work, C, usable, or D, all of the above, and the Mini, she's no exception. The first job we're going to start looking at today then is relocating the washer bottle. Now I've noticed a recent trend with some YouTuber car builds where they seem to omit the washer bottle and windscreen wipers. First of all, these get tested on UK MOT, so you can't do this if you want your car to be road legal, and I want the Mini to be road legal. Next, if you live where I do and you drive around here in the winter, you pray to God that you have screen wash. We have all been in that situation where we'll be waiting for a lorry to come past us the opposite direction a bit quick and spray our windscreen with water as it hits a puddle because we've inevitably run out. Anyway, rant over, we've got to make a bracket that relocates this from the driver's wing to the opposite side of the engine bay. Seriously people, build your cars properly. This here is the original bracket which the washer bottle mounts into. As you can see, I haven't really got any space there because some idiot stuck a twin cam engine in the way. So what we're going to have to do is make something that mounts over here and allows the bottle to be mounted into. Now, I don't really want to go welding it to the car because I always want the option of being able to return this vehicle back to a tuned up A series at some point. So what I'm probably going to do is make it bolt into these existing holes here. The first step in making the bracket was, as usual, make a cardboard template and then trace round it onto some steel. New toy. Despite being a new toy and following the instructions, it did not give a very good bend. I plan in the future to make some modifications to improve this, but for now I'm going to go back to the good old vice and hammer method to bend sheet steel. After temporarily bolting the bracket in place using the bolt hole I'd already created, I marked the location of the second one so that I could then drill it. I created a packer that was the correct thickness in order to bend up the washer bottle bracket. This was clamped in place and then using various hammers and other tools bent it into place. This is the Mini's horn. It's comically small and comically high pitched, however it is the original from the car and it does suit it, so I want to keep it. This horn should locate somewhere around here. However, unfortunately it won't bolt back into its original location because the alternator is in the way, and if I shift it further over to the passenger side, it's going to get dangerously close to the exhaust. I really don't want the exhaust melting my horn.
Stop laughing, children.
I do, however, want to keep the horn somewhere in this location because this is where the wiring on the car goes to the horn. I also don't want to have to go drill any extra holes into the bodywork, so what I'm going to do is create a bracket that will bolt into the OEM location ones at the back of the slam panel and reposition it further across here.
Just like before, a cardboard template was created before being traced round onto some steel and then cut out. For anyone who's not familiar with the UK MOT system, the horn is again one of the things that has to work on your car to be able to pass its test and therefore be road legal. Don't worry, all these parts I am making have been test fitted to the car and will be painted before final fit up.
The next little job is to swap out these rubbers on the track rod ends. Now normally I wouldn't do this and I would swap out the entire track rod end. It's usually because once these go, dirt gets into them and ruins the ball joints. Even when you swap them, a few months later they tend to go. I do, however, know the history of these ball joints. And 2 years ago when I put this car up in blocks and started sensing conversion, they were alright. They basically just dried out in the sun. So I'm going to take the easier and cheaper option this time by swapping these out.
I think the worst part of this job is trying to get the retainers back in place after you've inevitably got grease all over the rubber boot after re-greasing the ball joints.
Through the magic of editing, there's the second one done. And now a quick history lesson on my ownership of this Mini. This car was originally a 1 litre automatic. I bought it when I was 16, and at the time I really didn't want an automatic. To be honest, I still don't. I spent a year between buying this car and learning to drive, converting it from an automatic to a manual. As part of that, I ended up having to fit a clutch master cylinder and clutch pedal and connecting them to the slave cylinder that was in the engine. In order to connect them together, instead of buying the standard OEM parts, I opted to buy a one-piece braided clutch line, which I personally would recommend as this has fewer joints in, is a lot less hassle, and is actually fractionally cheaper than buying all the standard OEM parts. In my haste to get this car ready for the Mongol Valley, I misplaced this pipe and so ended up buying a second one. I now have 2 of these and don't really have a need for either of them, so I've got no issue of cutting up this one and modifying it. Also, over the years of me working on vehicles, I've got various leftover brake lines and clutch lines from other vehicles, so ideally I want to try and build up a pipe using all the leftover parts I've got and spend as little money as possible. Leave this one with me for a bit.
The design of the clutch pipe consists of a standard mini slave cylinder rubber hose, which will then bolt onto the slave cylinder and be held in place with a custom bracket that will bolt to the back of the subframe. This will then connect onto a hard line that I'll need to create, which will then connect onto the braided line I showed you earlier after some modification. After drilling the mounting bolt holes, the hole for the end of the mini rubber clutch hose was drilled. This was first pilot drilled and then taken out to size using the step drill. The second of the brackets required to hold the clutch pipe for once did not start life as a cardboard template, and instead was simply made by marking it out. The relatively simple design did not warrant the effort of making it in cardboard first. Of course, it's just my luck that I don't have the right size drill for the pipe fitting, so after drilling it out as close as I could, I then had to file out the rest. The pipe fitting I am using is held in place on the bracket using a recycled brake pipe clip.
Now I can't get a drill in to drill the necessary holes to mount that bracket, so as a temporary measure I'm going to tack weld it in place. With the brackets mounted to hold the flex lines in place, we can now look at making a hard line that connects the two of them together. Now this is cunifer, not copper. Copper should not be used for hydraulic lines such as clutch lines and brake lines. Cunifer is designed purposely for that because it has the fatigue strength that's necessary for the cyclic loads that you experience. It's also quite nice because it's fairly easy to bend and flare. I'd strongly recommend a pipe cutter for this, but for the life of me I cannot find mine currently, so junior hacksaw it is.
With the length of the pipe worked out, it was then just a case of cutting it to length and flaring the ends for the necessary pipe fittings. I will admit I had actually already flared out one end and bolted it to the mini rubber clutch hose in order to work out the length. The last piece of the puzzle was to modify the existing braided line so it could be joined onto the hard line that was made earlier. With all the parts made, it was then just a case of fitting them all to the car. I'll show you the completed clutch line in a later episode when we bleed it and test the clutch system.
This is the Mini's front brake pipe. It's not the original one. This section I had to remake when I rebuilt the car from the Mongol Rally. However, the upper section here is the original. This runs from the brake limiting valve on the bulkhead to the driver's side caliper and the front of the subframe and then into the passenger side caliper. This obviously probably isn't going to fit because we went and changed this for subframe, and all the mounts for this section here and for this end where it joins into the rubber flexible lines no longer exist. The good news is though, there is enough space between the inner wing and the engine for this one to probably sit somewhere near its stock location. So to start with, I'm going to split this length of pipe off this junction here, remount this into the car and figure out where to make that mount.
When working with brake pipes and clutch pipes, I highly recommend the use of proper brake pipe sockets or spanners, rather than trying to use a set of normal open-ended spanners which have a tendency to round off the nuts. Now, something I was taught to think about when I was at university was not only designed for manufacture but also designed for assembly. Here you can see me measure the size of the ring spanner required to do up the brake pipe retaining nut, as I need to make sure that I have clearance for it so that I can fit the brake pipe on once the mount is welded in place. Putting small 45-degree chamfers on the corners of the part helps you prevent catching your wrists when you inevitably have to put your hands down the side of an engine. Also, in case you were wondering, yes, I did make a second mount for the other side.
Brake pipe mount is held in position. I've checked for clearance with the pipes, so all I've got to do now is tack weld it in place.
welding the mounts to the frame is the last part in creating the brake pipe that will do with the subframe still in the car. Creating the actual pipe as well as fully welding the brackets I will show you in a later episode when the frame is taken back out the car.
This here is the Mini's wiper motor, and well, it works as well as any Mini's wiper motor does. The only thing is I had to take this out when I removed the front end wiring loom, and in the process of doing so I ended up damaging this park switch. This is quite a common thing to fail on these wiper motors, so fortunately the aftermarket comes to our aid and you can buy replacements of these. You do not have to buy an entire wiper motor. Mine, however, does look a bit scabby, so we're going to strip this apart, clean it, and then reassemble it before it goes back on the car.
Someone once told me that the vast majority of your time spent restoring anything is cleaning, and the wiper motor, it was no exception. Well, that's it for this episode. I'm going to leave you with me painting parts of the wiper motor assembly as well as a few other bits and pieces. Come back next time when hopefully we will finish wiring the car. If you've enjoyed this episode, then please hit that like button and share. If you want to keep up to date with the build, then please subscribe to my channel, and you can follow the link to my build thread on the mini forum, the link to which is in the description below. Once again, thanks for watching.